The galactic stalemate. In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, countless intelligent species had risen to forge a delicate peace. The Galactic Council, an assembly of the most influential civilizations, worked tirelessly to maintain the fragile balance of power. Among these diverse peoples, humans were relative newcomers. In just a few short centuries, they had gone from primitive combustion engines to faster-than-light drives, earning their place among the stars. Yet, despite humanity's rapid technological ascent, many on the Council still saw them as naive idealists, too soft and peace-loving to be taken seriously as a major player on the galactic stage. These perceptions were not entirely unearned. Since achieving interstellar flight, human leaders had consistently advocated for diplomacy and negotiation as the best path to resolving conflicts. Human ambassadors were often the first to call for ceasefires and cool-headed talks. Some species respected this commitment to peace. Others saw it as weakness. Tensions rose as reports filtered in of skirmishes between the ships of the Zorgath Empire and the Niskin Confederation, two of the most powerful and belligerent species in the galaxy. Each side accused the other of violating long-established treaties and encroaching on the other's star systems. As more troubling news arrived, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session on the glistening world of Arathalis Prime. Representatives from 100 species gathered in the Great Hall, their murmurs of concern echoing off the soaring crystalline walls. "The Zorgath have gone too far this time," growled Ambassador Zeleth of Nissia, his green scales rippling with agitation. "They have raided our outlying colonies, destroyed our mining facilities. This naked aggression cannot stand." "Lies and fabrications," rolled the Zorgath representative, Warlord Krozoth, slamming a clawed fist on his podium. "It is the Nishans who have violated our sovereign space, interfering with our legitimate commercial operations." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of arguing voices, each delegation pushing their own agenda. The greyish form of High Councillor Xaneth, an elder statesman of the ancient and wise Velari people, slowly rose from his chair. As he stood, the clamour died down, all eyes turning respectfully to the councillor. "These are serious charges," Xaneth said, his voice soft but firm. "If true, they represent dire threats to the peace we have all worked so hard to build and maintain." He turned his large, liquid eyes to the human delegation, who had thus far remained silent. "Ambassador Sinclair, what is the position of Earth and her colonies in this matter?" All eyes shifted to the human ambassador as she stood. Amanda Sinclair was tall and slender, her dark hair styled in a neat bob, her blue eyes bright and clear. When she spoke, her voice carried a calm authority. "Humanity urges restraint and diplomacy," Sinclair said. "We believe this conflict can and must be resolved peacefully, for the good of all. We stand ready to assist in mediation and negotiation however we can." Low mutters filled the chamber, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads in frustration. This was the anticipated human response, a call for talk, not action. Many wondered if the humans truly understood the stakes. Ambassador Sinclair pressed on, undeterred. "I propose a special diplomatic mission to meet with both the Zorgath and Nissian leadership, to hear their grievances and find a path to de-escalation. Let us cool the passions of the moment before they ignite into a conflagration that could consume us all." Warlord Krozoth snorted derisively. "The soft-hearted humans want to talk. How predictable. Will you still be talking when Nissian warships darken the skies over your worlds?" "Diplomacy is not softness," Sinclair replied, her gaze level and unflinching. "It is an act of strength, a choice to find solutions rather than simply lash out. I implore you all, let us at least attempt the path of peace before resigning ourselves to the grim necessity of war." After a long moment of heavy silence, High Councillor Xaneth nodded. "The human proposal is a reasonable one. Let it be known that the Council authorizes a special diplomatic mission to be led by the humans in hopes of averting further hostilities." The deliberations of the Council continued long into the night as the details of the diplomatic effort were worked out. Yet even as a tenuous plan took shape, an air of grim uncertainty hung over the proceedings. The galaxy teetered on a knife's edge, and many feared that, despite humanity's best intentions, the age of peace was coming to an end. Amanda Sinclair left the Great Hall late in the night, the stars of Arathelis Prime glittering coldly overhead. The path ahead was fraught with difficulty and danger, the odds of success painfully slim. Yet she remained determined. Humanity had a duty, an obligation to at least try to safeguard the hard-won galactic peace. Even if everyone else rushed to war, even if the galaxy descended into an inferno of destruction, humans would hold to their principles. They would not abandon diplomacy until the very last star burned out. The galaxy saw this as weakness, as fear, as naivete. But they were wrong. There was a quiet courage in the human commitment to peace, a strength of conscience that would not bend or break. And perhaps in the dark days to come, that strength would be the only light left shining in the void. Sinclair took a deep breath of the cool night air, squaring her shoulders under the weight of the task ahead. She would not give up. Humanity would not give up. They would fight for peace, even as the drums of war began to beat across the stars. Diplomacy fails. The special diplomatic mission began with a sense of urgency and hope. 3 swift human corvettes, sleek and silvery, set out from Arathelis Prime, each bearing a team of skilled negotiators and conflict resolution experts. Their goal was to meet with Zorgath and Nissian leaders on their respective homeworlds, to listen, to understand, and to find a way back from the brink of war. Ambassador Sinclair herself led the mission to Zorgath Prime, the bristling heart of the Zorgath Empire. As her ship descended through the rust-colored clouds, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The Zorgath were a proud and fierce species, their culture steeped in martial traditions. They respected strength above all else. Would they even be willing to listen to human appeals for peace? The answer came swiftly and harshly. No sooner had Sinclair's corvette touched down on the landing pad of the Zorgath High Command than a phalanx of heavily armed warriors surrounded the ship. As the human delegation disembarked, they found themselves facing a bristling wall of blasters and pulse rifles. Ambassador Sinclair rumbled a deep voice. The crowd of warriors parted to reveal the towering form of Warlord Krozoth himself, his black armor gleaming under the ruddy light of the Zorgath sun. Your presence here is an insult. The Zorgath Empire does not need human meddling in our affairs. Sinclair held her ground, looking up at the massive warlord without flinching. Warlord Krozoth, I come in the name of peace to seek a diplomatic solution to the current crisis. Surely we can at least discuss. There is nothing to discuss, Krozoth snarled. The Nissians have violated our territory, threatened our interests. We will respond as we always have, with strength and with victory. We do not need human permission or approval to defend what is ours. Despite Sinclair's attempts to argue for negotiation, Krozoth remained implacable. The meeting ended abruptly, the human delegation escorted back to their ship under armed guard. As the corvette lifted off, leaving the smoggy skies of Zorgath Prime behind, Sinclair couldn't shake a deep sense of unease. The Zorgath were clearly committed to a path of aggression. She could only hope her colleagues were having more success with the Nissians. But those hopes were soon dashed. Reports from the other diplomatic teams painted an equally grim picture. The Nissians, while less overtly hostile than the Zorgath, were also unwilling to back down. They accused the Zorgath of blatant aggression and vowed to defend their territory and their honor to the last. Pleas for calm and compromise fell on deaf ears. To make matters worse, news soon reached the Council of a disturbing development. A faction of hardline Nissian militants, calling themselves the Claws of Justice, had emerged, openly advocating for a preemptive strike against the Zorgath. They denounced any talk of negotiation or de-escalation as cowardice. That influence seemed to be growing by the day. The final blow to the diplomatic efforts came with shocking suddenness. Ambassador Tariq Ahmed, leading the mission to the Nissian capital, sent an urgent distress call. His corvette had come under attack by a squadron of unmarked fighters. The raiding ships were heavily armed and highly maneuverable, their design unknown. By the time Council reinforcements reached Ahmed's last known location, they found only a field of debris, the shattered remains of the human corvette drifting lifelessly among the stars. There were no survivors. Shock and outrage rippled across the galaxy. Many assumed the Zorgath were responsible, but Warlord Krozov vehemently denied involvement. The Nishans too disavowed any knowledge of the attack, though some speculated the claws of justice may have taken matters into their own hands. Regardless of the culprit, one thing was clear: the hopes for a diplomatic solution had been shattered, the fragile peace process left in ruins. The galaxy stood on the precipice of full-scale war. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, a pall of grief and fear hung over the assembled delegates. Many openly wept for the loss of the human diplomats. Others demanded immediate retribution against the attackers, whoever they might be. Through it all, Ambassador Sinclair stood grim-faced and resolute. The loss of her colleagues, her friends, was a heavy blow, but she could not let their deaths be in vain. "We cannot let this tragedy, as horrible as it is, push us into rash actions," she said, her voice heavy with sorrow but firm with conviction. "Now more than ever, we must strive for peace, for understanding. If we give in to anger and vengeance, then the attackers will have achieved their goal, to plunge us all into the abyss of war." But Sinclair's words, for all their wisdom, seemed to fall on increasingly deaf ears. The drums of war were beating now, their thunderous rhythm drowning out the quieter songs of peace. The Zorgath Empire and the Nissian Confederation began to mobilize their fleets and armies in earnest, each vowing to crush the other once and for all. The Galactic Council, desperately trying to hold on to its dwindling authority, issued desperate pleas for calm and restraint. But it was becoming all too clear that the time for talk was over. The galaxy was girding itself for battle, and the future seemed dark with the promise of blood and fire. As Sinclair watched the frantic preparations for war, her heart heavy with dread, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to face its greatest test yet. The coming conflict would strain every resource, every ally, every shred of human ingenuity and resolve. She could only hope that when the storm finally broke, when the galaxy descended into the crucible of all-out war, humanity would find the strength to weather the flames and emerge, if not unscathed, then at least unbowed. For if they failed, if the human commitment to peace was broken on the anvil of galactic conflict, then all the progress of centuries, all the dreams of a better tomorrow, would be nothing more than ashes scattered across the stars. The drums of war. The galaxy was a tinderbox, and the attack on the human diplomatic corvette was the spark that set it ablaze. Within days of the tragedy, full-scale war erupted between the Zorgath Empire and the Nissian Confederation. Mighty war fleets clashed in the void of space, filling the stars with the brutal light of destruction. On 100 worlds, armies of armored warriors and towering battle mechs marched against each other, turning lush planets into blood-soaked wastelands. The death toll rose with horrifying speed, entire cities reduced to rubble, whole populations displaced or annihilated. Warlord Krozov himself led the Zorgath war effort, his strategies brutal and uncompromising. Under his command, Zorgath forces smashed into Nissian space, laying waste of outlying colonies, bombarding industrial centers, and blockading key shipping lanes. The Zorgath war machine was relentless, implacable, driven by a single-minded desire for total victory. The Nishans, for their part, fought back with desperate ferocity. They relied on speed and stealth, striking quickly at Zorgath's supply lines and communication hubs before fading back into the void. The Claws of Justice, once a fringe extremist group, now found themselves at the forefront of the Nishian resistance, their tactics growing more audacious and ruthless by the day. Caught in the middle of this maelstrom of violence was the Galactic Council. Frantically trying to hold the line against the spreading chaos, the Council scrambled to assemble a peacekeeping force, calling on member species to contribute ships and troops to help contain the conflict. But the response was mixed at best. Many species, terrified of being drawn into the war, were reluctant to commit their forces. Others saw opportunity in the chaos, a chance to settle old scores or expand their own influence while the galaxy's attention was elsewhere. Through it all, the question of humanity's role loomed large. The loss of the diplomatic corvette had struck a deep chord with the human public. There were loud calls for retribution, for humanity to take up arms against those responsible. But the leadership on Earth and across the human colonies remained cautious. "We cannot let our grief and anger cloud our judgment," spoke Prime Minister Eliza Novak in an address to the global parliament. "If we rush to join this war, we risk becoming just another combatant in an ever-widening cycle of violence. We must remain committed to finding a path to peace, even in these darkest of times." But behind closed doors, the debates raged. Many in the human military argued that the time for talk was over. The galaxy was already at war, and humanity could not afford to stand on the sidelines. If the Zorgath or the Nishians emerged victorious, what would stop them from turning their sights on human worlds next? Quietly, almost imperceptibly, humanity began to prepare. The great shipyards of Earth and Mars, Titan and Europa, hummed with newfound activity. The finest scientific minds were called to secret meetings, hushed conversations in secure rooms. New research initiatives were launched, projects with names like Prometheus and Icarus, Aegis and Excalibur. Of course, the existence of these programs was strictly classified. On the surface, humanity maintained its stance of neutrality and non-aggression. Human diplomats continued to work tirelessly behind the scenes, seeking any glimmer of hope for a negotiated settlement. But with each passing week, each new report of Zorgath atrocities or Nishian brutality, that hope grew dimmer. The war continued to escalate, the death toll mounting, the fabric of galactic civilization fraying a little more with each battle. Many in the galaxy watched humanity's apparent inaction with contempt. The Zorgath openly, and humanity rises. As the war between the Zorgath and the Nishians raged on, a series of strange reports began to circulate. Whispers of a new force on the battlefield, a third party that struck with devastating precision and then vanished without a trace. At first, these reports were dismissed as mere rumors, the product of the fog of war and the overactive imaginations of stressed soldiers. But as more and more accounts surfaced, a pattern began to emerge. Zorgath's supply depots would be found utterly destroyed, their defenses bypassed as if they weren't even there. Nishian's strike forces would vanish en route to their targets, leaving no trace of what had befallen them. And in the aftermath of these mysterious incidents, survivors would speak of ghosts, of shadows that moved too fast to follow, of weapons that cut through the strongest armor like a blade through silk. The truth finally came to light in a dramatic fashion during the Battle of Kaldros Prime. This vital Nishian colony world had come under heavy Zorgath assault, the skies darkened by the hulking shapes of Warlord Krozoth's battle cruisers. The Nishian defenders fought bravely, but they were outmatched and on the verge of collapse. Just as all seemed lost, a new fleet emerged from hyperspace. At first glance, they appeared to be Nishian reinforcements, but as they drew closer, it became clear that these ships were of a completely unknown design. Sleek and silver, they resembled great arrowheads, their hulls shimmering with an opalescent sheen. They moved with impossible grace and agility, slipping through the Zorgath formations like quicksilver. And then they opened fire. Lances of pure energy, blinding white and searing hot, leaped from the newcomers' ships, spearing the Zorgath cruisers with pinpoint accuracy. Shields flared and failed, hulls crumpled and split, the mighty Zorgath warships reduced to drifting wrecks in a matter of moments. The Zorgath were thrown into chaos, their fleet quickly turning from an unstoppable juggernaut into a disorganized rabble. And through that chaos, the silver ships wove a deadly dance, picking off stragglers and crippling key vessels with surgical precision. Within hours, the battle was over. The Zorgath were in full retreat, their once proud fleet reduced to a limping shadow of itself, and the Nishians, who had been on the brink of defeat, now stood victorious. But the question remained, who were these mysterious saviors? The answer came in a broadcast that echoed across the battlefield. "This is Admiral Elena Vega of the United Earth Fleet," came a strong, clear voice. "We come in peace, but we will not stand idly by while the innocent suffer. To the Zorgath Empire and the Nissian Confederation, stand down. End this war now, or face the consequences." The galaxy reeled at this revelation. The humans, long dismissed as weak pacifists, had not only developed a fleet of warships but the mightiest Zorgath and Nissian vessels to shame, but they were now directly intervening in the conflict. Reactions were mixed. Some praised the humans for their principled stand, for their willingness to put their strength on the line to protect the vulnerable. Others condemned them as hypocrites, warmongers hiding behind a facade of righteousness. But one thing was clear. The balance of power had shifted. Humanity was no longer content to be a passive observer. They were now an active player on the galactic stage, and their technology and resolve had the potential to end the war, or to escalate it beyond all imagining. In the days that followed, human forces began to appear across multiple fronts. Wherever the fighting was fiercest, wherever civilians were most at risk, there the silver ships could be found. Under the leadership of Admiral Vega and her colleagues, the United Earth Fleet began to systematically dismantle the Zorgath and Nissian war efforts. Human ships escorted refugee convoys, shielding them from attack. They struck at key military installations, crippling the logistical networks that fueled the conflict. They even managed to capture Warlord Krozoth himself, dealing a massive blow to Zorgath morale. At the same time, human diplomats redoubled their efforts to broker a peace. With the balance of power so dramatically altered, both the Zorgath and the Nissians were more receptive to talks. Slowly, painfully, a ceasefire began to take hold. But even as the guns fell silent, a new unease gripped the galaxy. The human intervention had stopped the war, but at what cost? Many feared that humanity had now become too powerful, but their advanced technology and willingness to use it made them a threat to the very peace they claimed to uphold. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sinclair once again found herself at the center of a storm. Representatives from a dozen species demanded answers, accused humanity of warmongering and imperialism. Sinclair, her face lined with exhaustion, but her eyes still bright with determination, met their accusations head-on. "We did what we had to do," she said, her voice ringing clear in the cavernous chamber. "Not for glory, not for power, but because it was right. Because sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to fight for it." She looked around the room, meeting the gaze of each delegate in turn. Humanity remains committed to the ideals of the Galactic Council. We seek not to dominate, but to partner, not to conquer, but to protect. Together we can build a future brighter than any of us have dared to dream. But we must have the courage to stand up for what is right, even when it is hard. As Sinclair spoke, a hush fell over the chamber, and though the doubts and fears did not disappear, a new feeling began to grow alongside them. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, a new age was dawning. An age in which the strength of humanity, tempered by the wisdom of the galactic community, could lead to a lasting peace. It would not be easy. The scars of the war ran deep, and the mistrust even deeper. But for the first time in a long time, there was a chance. A chance to build something better from the ashes of conflict. And as Ambassador Sinclair looked out over the assembled delegates, she knew that humanity would be there every step of the way, ready to lend its strength and its compassion to the cause of peace. For that was the true spirit of humanity. Not aggression, not dominance, but an unending commitment to hope, to progress, to the belief that even in the darkest of times, a brighter tomorrow was always possible. And with that spirit to guide them, there was no limit to what the galaxy could achieve. New galactic order. In the aftermath of the human intervention, the galaxy found itself in a state of uneasy transition. The Zorgath Empire and the Nissian Confederation, their military might shattered and their economies in ruins, grudgingly agreed to a peace treaty under the watchful eye of the United Earth Fleet. The The terms were harsh but fair. Both sides were to immediately cease all hostilities, withdraw their forces from contested territories, and submit to comprehensive disarmament programs. Reparations would be paid to the world's most devastated by the conflict, and war crimes tribunals were established to bring the most egregious offenders to justice. Overseeing this fragile peace was a newly empowered Galactic Council, its authority bolstered by the unwavering support of the human delegation. Under the leadership of Ambassador Sinclair and her team, the Council began the daunting task of rebuilding the shattered galactic order. But even as the embers of war cooled, new challenges arose. The revelation of humanity's advanced military capabilities sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Many species, even those who had been allies of Earth, now looked upon humanity with a mixture of awe and fear. Whispers began to circulate of the human enigma. How had a species so young, so seemingly dedicated to peace, developed such frightening military might? What other secrets might they be hiding? Some even suggested that humanity's pacifism had been a ruse all along, a cover to buy time while they prepared for galactic domination. Faced with this growing unease, the human leadership knew they had to act. In a move that stunned the galaxy, they invited the Galactic Council to send observers to Earth and its colonies to witness firsthand the truth of human society. What the observers found defied all expectations. Far from being a militarized culture obsessed with conquest, Earth was a vibrant, diverse world where the arts, sciences, and philosophy flourished. The advanced technologies that had so shocked the galaxy were indeed widespread, but they were used primarily for peaceful purposes, to power clean cities, to heal the sick, to explore the wonders of the universe. And when it came to the military, the observers were even more surprised. The United Earth Fleet, it turned out, was a relatively small force, its personnel drawn from volunteers across all human colonies. Its primary mission was not conquest, but defense and peacekeeping. The truth slowly emerged. Humanity had indeed poured vast resources into research and development, but not to prepare for war. Rather, they had sought to create the tools they needed to fulfill their role as galactic mediators and protectors. The Prometheus project had yielded the advanced propulsion and energy systems that gave human ships that unparalleled speed and power. Icarus had developed the stealth technologies that allowed human forces to operate undetected. Aegis was focused on defensive systems, the shielding and countermeasures that had rendered Zorgath and Nishan weapons so ineffective. And Excalibur, perhaps most shocking of all, had been a program dedicated to advanced diplomacy and conflict resolution, combining cutting-edge psychological and sociological research with ally-assisted negotiation strategies. As this information came to light, the perceptions of humanity began to shift. No longer were they seen as mysterious warmongers or naive pacifists, but as a species deeply committed to the ideals of peace, but prepared to defend those ideals with all the resources at their disposal. This new understanding heralded a new era of galactic cooperation. Under human guidance, the Galactic Council began to evolve from a loose forum for debate into a true governing body, with the power to enact binding resolutions and enforce the rule of interstellar law. A new galactic charter was drafted, enshrining the principles of peaceful coexistence, mutual aid, and respect for sentient rights. For the first time, the disparate species of the galaxy had a common framework for cooperation, a shared vision for a better future. Of course, challenges remained. The Zorgeth and the Nissians, though humbled, still harbored deep resentments. Some of the more isolationist species remained wary of the growing power of the Council, and there would always be those who sought to exploit the cracks in the new order for their own gain. But humanity remained steadfast in its commitment, as Ambassador Sinclair said in her historic address to the Council on the first anniversary of the peace. "The road ahead is long, and it will not be easy. There will be setbacks, there will be moments of doubt and fear, but we will face them as we have faced all our challenges, together, with courage, with compassion, and with an unshakable faith in the power of unity. For that is the true strength of the galactic community. not in the might of our weapons or the reach of our fleets, but in the bonds of friendship, of trust, of shared purpose that bind us all. Together, there is no challenge we cannot overcome, no dream we cannot realize. Together, we will build a galaxy where every species, every world, every individual has a chance to thrive in the light of peace and prosperity. This is the promise of the new galactic order. This is the future we will create hand in hand, heart to heart, as one united galaxy. As Sinclair's words echoed across the stars, a new sense of hope and determination filled the galaxy. The road ahead was indeed long, but for the first time in generations, it was a road that led towards a brighter tomorrow. And at every step of that journey, humanity would be there, a beacon of hope and a guardian of peace, always ready to lend its strength and its wisdom to the cause of a better galaxy for all. Thus began a new chapter in the story of the cosmos, a chapter written not in the blood of war, but in the light of understanding, of cooperation, of the unbreakable spirit of unity that binds all sentient beings. It was a chapter that would be remembered for eons to come, as the moment when the galaxy chose the path of peace, and in doing so, changed the course of history forever. Under the guiding hand of humanity, the once fractured worlds of the Milky Way began to come together, not as rivals or adversaries, but as partners in the grand adventure of existence. Old hatreds were laid to rest, ancient wounds were healed, and a new era of exploration, discovery, and growth dawned. And though the challenges of the future would be many, though there would always be those who sought to sow discord and strife, the galaxy faced them with a new unity, a new resilience, born of the knowledge that no matter the trials, no matter the darkness, the light of hope and harmony would always shine through. For that was the legacy of humanity, the gift they had given to the stars. Not a gift of technology or power, but of something far more precious. The courage to believe in the best of ourselves and each other, and the strength to make that belief a reality. And as the ships of 100 worlds sailed forth into the vast unknown, as 1,000 species looked to the future with eyes filled with wonder and anticipation, the spirit of humanity sailed with them, a constant reminder of the heights that could be reached when all beings stood as one. The human era had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the never-ending story of the galaxy. A story of hope, of unity, of the unbreakable bonds that connect all living things. A story that would echo through the ages, a beacon of light to guide the way for all the generations yet to come.